The champs is back. Listen up, this is the anthem track. This is history in the making. You're all witnessing greatness. It's better when the pressure is on us. Our backs against the wall. What we do gets stronger. And everything we earn, we deserve. It's nothing but blood, sweat, tears, and hard work on our turf. Still on top, we stay focused. Been running it for a minute now if you ain't noticed. Cause now is our time, it's all or nothing. So pay attention, cause them boys is up to something. From the proving grounds to top tier, we won't stop, and they still mad cause we still here.
Welcome to episode 34 of the Foxborough Fellas podcast. We can call it the Shane Vereen episode or the Rex Burkhead episode if you're a newer Patriots fan. Anyway, this week you don't have to listen to me ramble. Divij is back from PTO. Nobody needs to listen to that 2 weeks in a row. Welcome back, Divij. Before we get into our packed agenda today, how are we feeling?
Feeling great, man. It's college football 25 week. It's been awesome. That game has been like everything I expected it to be. I'm still like early on. I started my dynasty with Georgia Tech. I'm like 8 games in. I think I'm 5-3 right now, which isn't bad. But yeah, dude, that game is so fun. I love the new recruiting thing that they've added. With all like the influence meter and everything. It's so fun, dude. I love that game.
I know. I think I'm in week. I just finished my first season. I'm in my bowl game. I'm the BC Eagles. I brought them back. I started on varsity mode and just absolutely destroyed everyone and realized I had to go up to whatever but after I did that, the game is flawless. Like the game is amazing, right? Like it plays so good. The speed differential between the burners and like the schmucks is great. So like it feels like real college football. Yeah, me and you need to match up. I want to take you down with Tommy C. I'll be running all over my play actions all over Georgia Tech.
It's the cool thing about Georgia Tech in this game is like Haynes King like had a great season last year, like third team all ACC. So like Haynes King was highly rated. And all our receivers and running back are like our receivers are shorter, like 5'10" to like 6'1", the shorter range. But 3 of our receivers have speeds over 93. So a lot of the times it's just like daggers and crossers and it's just spamming them and like getting 20 yards after catch. It's been awesome. And the one thing, I've only tried like in the regular play, I only tried 2 other teams. I tried Ole Miss because I really wanted to with like the whole their transfer portal stuff. And I tried Ohio State because I really wanted to just run the ball with Quinshon Judkins. And dude, some of these like the player specific moves that they've added, like the player specific jukes, that like Quinshon's juke is like a step back juke. Dude, those things are so cool to watch in this game. It's been awesome.
This game is amazing, and I think it's going to be cool. And to transition us into the Patriots, it's going to be cool to play with some of these guys, and then watch them turn into Madden players. I feel like that will be a cool experience for a lot of people who aren't like diving in on a week-to-week basis to college football. You know, watching it, you know, they can be fans of the sport or of the game, you know, in a different way. It's just cool overall. But anyway, Patriots, New England Patriots. I want to start off with what I think we can dive through really quickly. Taylor Kyles said, if you live through your defense in your run game, I think this team can make a serious push for a wild card spot. And I read it and I was like, oh, is this just like trying to drum up like, you know, some controversy here? Like, but I was like thinking about it for a second. And like last year I had the take, and like you and I have talked about, if they had an offense that was worth their weight in feathers, they would have been a playoff team, right? They could have won many more games just like based on how good the defense was. The defense has Judon coming back, maybe asterisk. We'll get to that later. And Christian Gonzalez coming back. They didn't lose really anything on defense. And the offense, which was horrid last year, has worked on some things. I'll put it that way. They've moved on from their quarterback situation. They've tried to add some pieces at O-line. So at least they've tried is kind of, you know, my take there. So could they be a wild card team? Could they go out there? Vegas doesn't think so. And I can get to the odds in a second. I don't think so either. So Vegas has them at plus 900 to make the playoffs. So if
Even
You
worse
know,
at some places. I think I checked FanDuel was like plus 980. It
damn.
was there's
Like
some
better if you're Taylor, right? Though, because you could
yeah,
get some more money. If you actually believe this, go out there and throw some money
yeah.
and go get your
Yeah,
plus
they'll
980 and
they'll get you plus 1,000. I think MGM had it plus 1,000. So
yeah, go over there and get that. If you actually believe that, like, go put your money where your mouth is and place a bet because you'll get a great payout, right? Like,
yeah.
sometimes when I say things, it's like, well, if there's a DraftKings bet, I actually do want to go put my money there because I actually do believe this and do think that you could get a win. I don't believe that they'll make a wild card spot. I'm not putting my money there. But if you thought that they could win 10 games, you can exactly 10 games, which I think that's what it will take potentially to make a wild card spot. You might need to win 11. You could potentially need to win 12, 9. What was one year that the team got in with 9? I think that since there's
Yeah.
an expansion of the number of teams, you're more likely to get in. But right around there, 10 wins is exactly 10 wins is plus 2,500. Over 8.5 wins, which you surely need to get over 8.5 wins, is plus 600. So nobody in Vegas thinks that the Patriots are going to even sniff the playoffs. In fact, they're one of the highest ranked teams to not win a game, to go with the longest team to go winless. Like, they're more thinking along those
Yeah.
lines. Never
The
mind.
the be-
Like, are we even having the right discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that as like a likely possibility at all. Like on top of everything you said, which is if we had an offense worth our way, we are also projected to be to have the as an offense to have the least amount of total touchdowns, least amount of passing touchdowns, and the least amount of rushing touchdowns, which is like there's no room for this offense or where it's projected at right now to kind of take that massive leap forward, which is again, I'm not saying that massive leap forward makes is to become an above average offense, but that massive leap forward is to be a top 20 offense. And when you're the second worst offense coming off a 4-win season, that is insanely hard to do. When it comes to how Taylor explained that, if that plus 10 plus 1,000 bet or whatever, like plus 1,000, that's like just under a 1% chance. If that was actually cashing in, I do think that the vision Taylor had was correct. That if it happened, it would happen that way. That we are a 140 plus yards a game rushing team. We are a team that is probably top 5 in defensive DVOA and EPA per play in defense, while still holding offenses like probably under 20 points a game. And it's all those dominoes falling, plus our defensive turnover luck favoring us, plus our offensive turnover luck favoring us. Like all those things would have to fall in place for us to actually like be in the wild card or even be close to making a considerable push for the wild card. And when I say like considerable push, I don't want to be the like, oh, if it's like we are 3-5 in week 9 and people are like, oh, if they win out, they can make a wild card. I don't consider that a wild card push. It's like the last 4 weeks of the season. And I don't think this team is quite built for that yet. And none of us are expecting that. But the the biggest thing I'm expecting from this team, which will help us transition a couple of our future points, is the defense. And I do think the defense is going to be philosophically very similar to what we saw under Bill Belichick, plus Matt Judon coming back, Christian Gonzalez coming back, adding a good, consistent off-ball linebacker depth piece in Taki, plus our second-year players who were our second and third round picks in the 2023 draft, Keon White and Marte Mapu, they actually taking a step forward and actually playing more meaningful snaps. I think those are all things that are still lined up in our favor to be a top 10 defense next year or this upcoming year. But for that offense to be 12 spots better than what it was last year on the backs of a rookie quarterback, 2 rookie receivers, and possibly 2 rookie offensive linemen, we'll see. At least 1 rookie offensive lineman. At this point, I also just consider like City South he played like 200 offensive snaps. He's essentially a rookie. So it's like, it is a lot to ask for. So I see Taylor's vision. I'm just not bought in.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody that knows anything about the New England Patriots could tell you that their defense is good. And on offense, the best thing they have going is running the ball.
Yeah.
That doesn't really take much to say that. So I understand that if they're going to win games and be successful, that is what it will look like. It will look
Yeah.
like a run first offense and a tough, gritty defense that limits the other team from scoring so that our offense doesn't really need to go score 30 plus points a game because they're not letting up that many points per game. So
Yeah.
I also see the vision. If that is how they would like to win games now, I think in the future they could see more of a stretch the field type of an offense, right? Where
Yeah.
Drake May can take the top off of a defense and also kill you with play action. He can run, get out of the pocket. It would be nice to have an elite running game on top of that. But I think that the plan for the Patriots isn't to be a grinded out running team. I think that eventually this team needs to morph out of that run first. This is 2024, everyone. I mean, like, we're not going to run the ball and play stiff defense. That is what Bill Belichick brought to this team, right? That is the Patriot way. It almost feels like with the stifling defense, the run that supports the passing, the screen, the dink, and the dunk, right? That was the Patriot way. So I think that you're going to see a little bit of a morph and a little bit of what Gerard Mayo wants to bring. But I understand also why he said we're going to live through the defense and the run, because that's the current operation scheme.
For sure. And just the one last point that I had about our defense, comparing both our last 2 years. So 2022, we were the third best team when it came to total turnovers, and last year we were bottom 8. So depending on like what turnover statistic you're looking at, whether that's total turnover or turnover percentage, that is something. Turnover is so luck dependent, and what was happening more often than not last year was opposing offenses were willing to just pick up one first down, and if after that it's they're getting off the field, that's fine, because they had more faith in our offense to not be able to do anything, play field position over 4 quarters, and then just grind out a game 10-7, 10-6, and those were a lot of our losses. And our defenses, I think our defense's lack of turnovers last year was originally predicated because of our offense. And I don't think that will be the case this year. If our offense takes step forward, our offense will have our defense take a step forward, both in field position but also in turnovers. Because if we are that team that can maybe get a couple explosive plays and be up by 10 points in beginning of the third quarter, you do force the other opposition to push the ball downfield. That is where a lot of mistakes tend to happen, and that is where you can force turnovers. Last year, we just weren't in that position. So I think that is something that would have to change to force turnovers. And I don't think we're going to just be, because of that, we're going to be a top 5 turnover team again. But I do think from like the bottom quartile or top 3, I think we're just going to regress somewhere to the average for turnovers. Plus, that on top of how good our defense actually is when it comes to just playing down to down and play to play, I do think the defense is going to be solid. I like the offensive moves that we made, but the thing that's still holding me back is the offense and just how unrealistic that big of a step sounds in 1 year.
Yeah, we're not going to be a wild card team. We might be one of the
Yeah.
worst teams in the NFL. So
Yeah.
that summarizes that conversation. But let's talk about the defense some more, and let's hone in on the safety position. What's next on the agenda is Peppers and Duggar. Just talking about the two, because Peppers was left out of the top 10 while Duggar made the top 10. I've been very consistent. I think Peppers is better than Duggar. So obviously I disagree with the top 10. I want to describe 2 safeties to you, and I want you to tell me which one is the top 10 safety. And this is just using PFF and one statistic outside of PFF. So this is the first safety. Is this the top 10 safety? 0 Pro Bowls. 150th ranked out of the safeties by PFF in coverage. 15th in run defense. 72nd in man coverage and 154th in zone coverage. So that's safety number one. I won't put the name on it. Is that the top 10 safety? Or is the top 10 safety a player that missed 2 games and has yet to play 1,000 snaps in a season? So there's the caveat, but also 11th in coverage last year as ranked by PFF, 2nd in run defense, 12th in man coverage, or 20th in zone coverage. Which one sounds more like the top 10 safety?
I mean, I know these statistics, so I'm
setting you up. I'm setting you up completely because it's Peppers. Peppers was last year ranked 11th in coverage, so top 15. 2nd in run defense, top 3. 12th in man coverage, top 15 again. 20th in zone coverage, top 20, right? So always being within the top of something, right? Top 15, top 3, top 20. He's always right there. So you could say top 10 could be a reasonable thing to say. Then you go to Duggar, 150th in coverage. Holy crap. There's 2 safeties on 32 teams that start. I mean, he's outside of even a starting safety on any NFL team when it comes to coverage last year. That's horrific, in my opinion. We know he's not great in coverage, though. So, let's go to where he's good. He's 15th in run defense. He's not even in the top 10 at what he does really well last year. It was an off year, right? I get that. He has had better performances than what he performed last year. So I get he'll be on the upswing in a lot of these things. But let's just say he moves to 10th, moves up 5 spots. Let's say he moves up 10 spots. Even if he's 5th in run defense, does that pull his pass coverage weakness up enough to put him in the top 10? Because like I said, 72nd in man coverage, can't cover a tight end. Not asked to do it a lot either, though. So I feel like your ranking is going to be kind of tough to look at when you don't do it very often, right? But when you were asked to do it, you didn't do it very well is kind of the point. And then 154th in zone coverage. So it's like average the two together, 72 and 54. We're not coming close to anywhere that should be a top 10 safety. How did Duggar get rated a top 10 safety and Peppers get left out? I just feel like it's a complete swing and a miss. People just looked at the contract, looked at the college, looked at the draft pick, forgot who Jabril Peppers was. Like, I'm just so confused. I don't get it at all. I know you're high on Duggars. Try to explain this to me.
So first off, I do agree with most of the things that you said. I think because of age a little bit and experience, I value Peppers more as a player right now than I value Duggar. I think I value Duggar more as a long-term asset than I value Peppers. But I do think Peppers is the better player. The one thing that we are forgetting is this list was made by ESPN. ESPN's whole, if you haven't seen the top 100 athletes of the 21st century list, that was another list. ESPN does this in the offseason to just clickbait people and kind of just put in some weak spots in there that they know that shouldn't be there to kind of spark discussion, get more interactions. It's just an ESPN thing to do. Tom Brady being the 5th greatest athlete of the 21st century, that was just fucking disrespectful.
Can I butt in though? PFF also did a top 32 safeties heading into the NFL season, and they had Duggar at 9 and Peppers at 11. So
I would honestly swap that. I could. So here's my take on the whole Duggar's Pepper situation. I think where Duggar's value essentially is him playing more in the second level and being that ball hawk. And his ability to create more turnover-worthy plays is what people value. If I'm honestly ranking the safeties, I think Peppers for me is anywhere between the 7th to the 10th best safety in the league. And I think Duggar is anywhere from the 14th to the 18th best safety in the league for me, in my opinion. I think where Peppers and we talked about this, our defense's ability to consistently play down to down. And I think that is where Peppers shines the most. I think he's not as versatile. He will consistently play safety, but he's just so consistent down to down. And his skill level and execution is just so on point, especially when it is us playing one high, because it is his athletic ability to move. It's either sideline to sideline or second level to third level. that is where he can do that so consistently and effortlessly that allows us to play as much one high as we want to. And I just feel like right now, as a player, and especially as a team, which still cannot lean on their offense, I think Peppers right now is just a better player for the team. Now, where I see, or to make an argument for Duggar, he had a horrible year in coverage last year. But I don't think that's like reflective of like his whole coverage ability, because his second and third year, he was consistently like around the 35th to 40th best safety in coverage. So last year was like a little bit of an outlier, but I still don't think he's a top 32 coverage safety. The one part of Duggar's game that goes a little, I would say a little to the side when it comes to our overall defense is his usage and simulated pressures. I think him coming off the edge as a blitzer, generating pressure, I think that is something that he's consistently been above average at, but he generally does not have the sack numbers or the the QB hit numbers that you would want to see. And I think that is where a lot of his upside lies. So I think Duggar's strength is going to be that second level safety. And Peppers is going to be our true, like, I would say more of a field general safety. So I do think Peppers is the better player. I think people are just rating Duggar to, if he just takes that like half a step forward, is the 32nd best safety in coverage. People are banking on the fact that as a safety, he can be top five in both run defense and simulated pressures. And on top of that, if he's like league average at coverage, that makes him a top 10 safety. I think that is the logic that I can see people using. I love Kyle Duggar. I do think he's going to take that step forward this year. But as of this moment, will I say he's a top 10 safety? Probably not. And as of this moment, will I say Jabril Peppers is a top 10 safety? 100%.
Yeah. It just feels like a layup, too, to say that. To say those two things out loud.
Yeah.
Duggar is not a top 10 safety at this current moment. Peppers is.
Yep. Yeah.
Why is it people are flip-flopping him, and even PFF's like remarks to justify it are just he had his worst year last year. He's done better before. Hopefully he turns it around. How is that backup to support a top 10 safety? It's more like we have faith that he'll turn it around. Like, yeah, but he was never a top 10 safety. So even if he turns it around and goes back to where he was never a top 10. What are we doing here? So I don't get that argument at all that Duggar is a top 10 safety. Not to take anything away from Duggar, because I think he has a lot of potential. Like you said, rushing the quarterback year over year, stats got better every single year. I think he had 15. If you combine the QB hurries, QB hits, and sacks, you add them all up, 15 was the number, which I think he had 10 the year before. Just year over year, getting more in the quarterback's face. He's good in run support. He did it better last year than he did this year, but nonetheless, we know he can do it. If he could work on his coverage skills, or just be put in the right position in the coverage game, I think that will lead to a higher score.
That is what I was going to say, that a lot of the times, and this is something that I think like from the traditional roles we need to move forward a little bit, is that if ever we were playing cover one man, Duggar was just expected to cover. But to play to his strengths, in if we were playing like just cover one man, I think Duggar is probably our best player to put in the zone hole in the middle, and just letting him sit in the middle and play that ball hawk role, be that hard hitter, maybe rush the quarterback if he has to, if the quarterback's mental clock is over, like whatever that quarterback's mental clock is supposed to be, like 3 seconds, 4 seconds, depending on the QB. That is something where Duggar will thrive. And I think what I would like to, like you said, that his pass rush numbers are getting better. And I do agree with that. What I want to see is step forward with Duggar is just, I don't care if the total of that number changes, but I do want a lot more of those hurries to change into hits. Because that is something that has been lacking from him, that his quarterback hurries or his pass rush snaps are not really converting into QB hits and sacks, which are just theoretically way more influential plays. because there's higher chance of either turnover or a negative play there. So that is something that I would like to see improve from Duggar. I think Duggar has just been counted upon as because of his upside. And I do think we need to find that balance between upside and what we know currently. I think just Peppers' current resume and just his level of consistency, it's too hard to just bat an eye on, you know?
Yep.
So I do think going forward, I still believe we have easily a top 7 safety room in the league when it comes to our two starters. But I do think that if I have to pick one safety for the next 2 years, I will take Peppers. If we go into a longer term, that is when the conversation changes.
I mean, Peppers is 28. It's not like he's like some old
Yeah.
fella. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
how old is Kyle Duggar?
26, 25,
Yeah,
26.
he's not trailing. You know, this isn't a crazy difference here between
Yeah.
the two ages.
Yeah.
So you're talking about proven, established player,
Yeah.
and someone who needs to kind of prove themselves. Let's talk about an established player in Matthew Judon. Matthew Judon, quite clearly, when healthy, is a sack a game type of player. He's definitely getting in the backfield consistently. He's your best pass rusher on this team. Doesn't have a contract, and Bedard came out and said today, and we tweeted it out, that he won't be playing under this contract this year, which means not for the Patriots, which means he's traded or extended. You know, something's happening that hasn't happened yet. I don't see the sense, and like I don't see the Patriots going, oh, it makes sense for us to pay you a huge bag of money right now. Reason being, you'll be 33 going into next season. You're coming off a season-ending injury. It would make more sense for us to see that you have what you've shown us still. And he's probably sitting there going, what reason do you have to doubt me that I wouldn't show up just like I've shown up for you for however many of the past few years, right? Being prolific, really one of your best pass rushers. So I see the counter arguments on both sides, which kind of makes me believe, if I was going to be impartial, that we're going to be at a standoff here. The Patriots have a good reason to believe what they believe, and Judon kind of has a good reason to believe what he believes, which could kind of mean a holdout type of situation. He hasn't shown up yet. We're going to see next Wednesday of next week is when training camp begins. So we'll see if he's there, if he's participating. We're just going to see a lot of things come the future. So there's no reason for us to predict the future. But what do you think is happening here, Divij, with Matthew Judon, his contract, and just his future with the Patriots?
So the way our pass rush is kind of structured currently, Judon is supposed to be that consistent down to down rusher with like the biggest like bag of pass rush moves. And then Keon is supposed to be developing into that. And right now he's just that high motor rusher. And then Uche is supposed to be that speed rusher, consistently lining out as a wide 9 and just speed rushing constantly. As in theory, that sounds great. With Judon, the biggest thing is, which you touched on, Pete, is a season-ending injury last year. Judon is a very handsy, I would say, plays a very good pad level, has a good swim move, all these things. The thing is, since he injured I think it was like a elbow bicep injury, like on his arm tendon, that considerably affects a pass rusher's ability to make those moves and rush the way that Judon rushes. I think what is the Patriots, I'm assuming that it's their biggest concern, is they haven't seen him put pads on since he got injured. They haven't seen him do anything meaningful when it comes to pass rushing, when it comes especially like in any like simulated game scenario, like, and we will hopefully see that a little bit in the preseason during training camp. And I think that is what the Patriots are kind of holding off on, because we saw that they did have contract negotiations. They didn't go as planned, but I think the Patriots are just willing to see that, like, oh, hey, if you think you're the same guy as you were before you got injured, just wait an extra 4 weeks to sign and just show us what you got in practice. Because since he got injured, the pads haven't come on. And I think that is something that I'm assuming is the Patriots' biggest concern, is how much is this injury going to affect him? I think as a player, you always bet on yourself. You always believe in yourself. So and I think Judon's doing that, and like kudos to him for that. I just think when it comes to money like this, the Patriots should be smart. And I think I'm okay with paying Judon middle of the preseason and just waiting a little bit once you have assessed this injury situation better, once you have the 4 weeks of padded practice and 2 or 3 preseason games in, and then decide whether you want to proceed. I think it is just such a gray line because as players get older, recovering from injuries gets harder. And like you said, Pete, he's going into his age 33 season. It's not going to be easy for him to just step in day one or week one and be the guy that he was before this injury. So I think the Patriots are evaluating all of that and seeing where his market value lies. Because if you know that like a lot of the top pass rushers last year too got moved later on in or middle of the season or at some point like that. Like Yannick Ngakoue got signed by the Bears pretty late into the offseason. Bears traded for Montez Sweat late into the season. Chase Young got traded. And like all these things with pass rushers, we have seen that rushers are traded for way later or closer to the trade deadline. And that is something that I bet the Patriots are also evaluating, that what is his trade value? What is his market value actually looking like? And do we believe that we should pay a 33-year-old player way above his market value? So I think there's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, and if I was like GM or like I was playing Madden, I would want to get a return on my investment, right? I'm thinking about the future, winning Super Bowls. When I'm winning Super Bowls, is Matthew Judon on the team? And I answer that question with a no. He's probably not on the team when I'm winning Super Bowls. So let's get a return on my investment. I don't really see a sense in extending them. The things that I can't account for are the internal feelings amongst the team, amongst the organization. Like, does everyone love this player, and trading him would just be like insulting to everyone around? Then you can't. Like, those factors definitely come into play. Similar to like why Bill Belichick only got 4 years after moving on from Tom Brady. There was just other things at play here. Like, you usually give a legendary coach more than 4 years, right? He wasn't, because the marriage, bro. It was other things. There's other factors.
Yeah.
So you got to know what's going on with Judon. And it's interesting that he's been a little public, right? On Twitter, he said, I don't think that's going to happen when talking about his extension. So he's basically saying, I'm probably not getting re-signed, guys.
Yeah.
And then talking about, or Greg Bedard coming out saying he's probably not going to play under this contract. More than likely won't play under this contract, I think was the verbiage. He doesn't get that information without him, out of being verified and told to him. So Judon's definitely letting everyone know, hey, they don't want to re-sign me. And I wonder if that causes a little bit of a locker room issue in what is going to be a losing season. And you and the vibe chart, Divij, the vibe chart, I'd like to bring it up. The vibes are high, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we have a holdout amongst one of our best defensive players. The vibes have taken an aura hit. We have gone down -2. If we were at 100 out of 100, we're at 98 now. We at least have to subtract some points from the vibe chart. We have a potential holdout and someone upset publicly already at this team. I think that can't be understated because normally Judon is like kind of like your face of your team. If ESPN had to put a graphic up of two teams facing off and they had to show their all-star highlight player, and Drake May isn't starting on the team, Judon's probably the guy wiping his face with his big red sleeve. That's probably the image you put up there for the Patriots. 100%. This is the guy that won't play under his current contract.
Yeah. And I think a couple other things that we need to consider, and what the Patriots are definitely considering right now, is what Judon is like at practice as a player coach. So we've talked a lot about that, like Uche kind of signed this prove it deal to just take a step forward because he wants to be at the Patriots long term. Keon's like going into his second year. He needs to develop a bigger bag of pass rush moves. Judon is the guy who can help develop both, but is he doing that in practice? And is Covington like, oh, hey guys, like me and my staff got it. Like all the improvements these two are making is just like they're responding well to my staff, and that's good. That brings Judon's value down a little more. On top of that, the big thing that you mentioned is vibes. We just got a guy who had to prove himself, Christian Barmore, even though he was a second round pick, to like actually get the bag by being like a top 10, if not like top 7, if not top 10 defensive tackle in the league. And that's what got him his bag. Uche, like I said, came back and signed his a prove it deal. There's guys on that defense that have been there for a while, like where like team captains like Dietrich Weiss. And what if they're like, oh hey, like we all bought in because we were bought into the system, and if this guy is not buying in, I'm fine with trading him. I think that's also a flip side that the Patriots might be considering. Like vibes are so important for a young team. We've like mentioned that for ever since the draft. What if Judon right now in the building is bad vibes, and that is also pushing the Patriots? Like, do we just cash out on him right now? And these are again things so like you never know till they happen. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and that is something that we have to discuss because with holdouts, it's generally like T. Higgins. It's just money. He straight up said, I want to be a top 10 paid receiver in the league. Bengals have not agreed to that. That's a holdout. With Judon, there's a lot more pieces with age, injury, like we mentioned, vibes, as a player coach, experience. All these things can come in so much that it makes the Patriots' decision harder, which is not the best because we have a rookie GM and a rookie head coach. But that's something we just have to wait for. And I'm okay with these many moving pieces, not just throwing a bag at him and just taking your time and doing your due diligence.
It's interesting too. You mentioned the rookie head coach, the rookie GM, to see how they handle a situation like this. Your star
100%.
player is holding out. He's saying he is. It hasn't happened yet because we'll see on Wednesday if he's there or not. I'll be there Thursday in person to let you know if he's there Thursday, right? So we'll know if we have a problem on next week's episode or not. When we'll be ready to cover it for you in depth. You talked about moving pieces and trading him. I think trading him is an option, but if he doesn't play and he's holding out and willing to take the fine and all the whatever the penalties that come with that, you can't really trade him because other teams will have the same concern, right?
Yep.
Coming off a bicep injury, like why won't he play? Why doesn't he want to show up and play? Is it because he can't? Does he know that he's not what he once was, so he wants the bag so he can secure it? Is he talking guaranteed money? I'm interested to see if they're like, fine, we'll trade you now, so that nobody, the other teams, don't have to think that there's an issue because you haven't played for 6 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever, that you've taken a month off of your job, basically. It'd be interesting to see what happens. And trading him now, I mean, when you're talking value, I'd rather him be out there sacking people every single week than trade him at a high than now or with all these question marks. So he would be really screwing us over if he demanded to be traded now, as allowing himself to go play. Show that if you're that nasty and you deserve the bag, go out there and be a monster, and let's trade you and let that team extend and re-sign you to the big bag. We can't afford the big bag. You don't make sense for our project. The project that we're doing doesn't line up with what you're doing in the NFL. Let's trade you to a contender. Go win at the end of your career. Go be a monster on some defense that's contending. They can re-sign you to a big bag as part of that. We'll get some draft capital right now or some young players right now because that's what we need for this project is rebuild tools. And you have a lot of value, so you can bring us a lot of those rebuild tools. I feel like that needs to be the outlook here from the Patriots.
Here's a question for you though, with like us factoring in that, like, if he doesn't resign and he is willing to hold out, I think trading him is the best option. What do you think is a fair trade offer for the 33-year-old Matthew Judon? That's a whole separate thing.
If he's holding out, that brings his trade value down, right? Because then it's essentially like, well, we could just wait a year and get him in free agency. So what we're willing to pay is just to basically have first dibs at free agency on this guy and get a year use out of him. That's what you're trading for. You're not trading for Matthew Judon. So I'd like to put the disclaimer there. So I think you're looking at like a 3rd round pick, maybe 4th round pick, which I would not move. Like that just doesn't move my needle.
I was gonna say like
Patriots.
Probably a 4th round pick, because last year, like, we saw Montez Sweat being traded at the trade deadline. That's a 26-year-old edge rusher who's like pre-prime right now. getting traded for a conditional second, like a third that actually ended up converting to a second. But that is the type of trade offers we are seeing for edge rushers middle of the season. What are we even going to get for him? Like a fourth rounder, like conditional fourth? Well, what's gonna be the case? And like at that point, will the teams actually even be willing to give up a fourth? What if they're just like, we are not like, what if it's like a 7-10 type of team trying to sign Matthew Judon? They're just like, might as well keep some more draft capital and just sign him in free agency.
Yeah,
So
I mean, look, what's a fourth? A fourth is like we got out of our 4th round pick, we got Baker this year.
Baker and
Like,
Robinson. We got two.
Like, all right, so let's just pick one, right? Let's just say Robinson ends up being the better NFL player, a sturdy right guard. Would you trade for a developing sturdy right guard for Matthew Judon, or a development X wide receiver? Like, and I don't know. Like that, maybe that's better than Judon, though. Wouldn't you rather Layden Robinson than Judon?
Especially
like,
since
thinking about Judon for a year versus Robinson
exactly
potentially 8 years, right?
8 years.
2 contracts to be 8
or
years
just their rookie contract. Even if you have them just for their rookie, 4 years, like 4th round pick. Like I'm assuming, like let's just take Javon Baker's contract, 4 years, $5.5 million. So like just over 1.1 million a year. Like that is really not that bad when you consider like of a development prospect. Then like, I'm gonna get this guy for 1 year and then maybe pay him like $13-14 million a year for like 2 more years.
Let's scale it back. Let's go to Dial, or even like you know what I mean? Even Dial, like a 5th round pick. I would rather work on somebody we drafted in the 5th round for 4 years than get 1 year of rental service. And he might win us a game we don't really particularly want to win too. It's kind of like that type of scenario too. Like, let's get some talent off this team. If we're not going to be winning, let's at least like turn it into success in the future instead of current success. Like he could win you 1 game this year being spectacular, but a 5th round pick that works out could win you 2, 3, 4, 5 games over his 4-year contract, right? Like if they end up playing and being productive. So even if you got pennies on the dollar, get something back for him. That's the mode you're in. If you were potentially flirting with a wild card spot, we wouldn't even be talking about this. It'd be keep the player for the year. I'd rather have an elite pass rusher for a year than a 4th round pick when we're flirting with the playoffs. But we're not even flirting, as we talked about to begin the show. So I'm out on that. And it kind of, if you don't mind, helps me transition into the next thing. I'm also out on Aiyuk and trading anything of substantial capital to get him. That was floated out there too, which is our last topic of the day, to trade for Aiyuk or not, because he's demanded a trade. And I have some reasons why I don't want to trade. The first reason is we have too many wide receivers in this wide receiver room. It's already clogged up. Now, if he would join the room, he would instantly go immediately to the top, and the clog would still be there. It just would be with lesser players. So it's not a major issue to have a clog of wide receivers, but we just have a lot already. So it's like, who planned this out? Like, if we were going to be trading for these types of players, whose plan is this? We don't have a QB of the future in place yet. We don't have the O-line of the future in place yet. So really, I feel cart before the horse applies here. It's like sometimes I would like to have, some blocking and the ability to pass before I start developing these really good wide receivers or bringing in really good wide receivers. That almost feels mismatchy. And then lastly, his contract situation. We the same thing that applies to Judon applies here, right? Maybe we get him for 1 year and he's gone. Like, what the F is that? Like, I'm not trading anything if I can't guarantee that I'm going to have this player for years to come in the future. And why would he want to sign a contract after being traded here? I'll be part of your rebuild. That sounds like fun. He's leaving a Super Bowl. He's leaving a contender. Like, why would he want to do this? So I don't think that you're going to get him to come to the Patriots, sign in a contract extension, and be happy for 3 years while he waits for Drake May to eventually take over and while he waits for our O-line to come in. So I just don't think it's the right time. I think I would rather get the wide receiver in the next offseason, in the 2025 offseason.
I am kind of a little bit on a different side for this. First off, the one thing, when I saw the Aiyuk requested a trade, I was like, wait, is this like his 4th time requesting a trade? Like, I just thought he already did like 3 times.
I thought he did too, but this is like for realsies this time.
I was like, okay, like, yeah. Like, it's like, when you like tell your manager in passing that, oh, I'm gonna take this day off, but like, oh, and then you like remind her that like, oh, like that 1 week I'm planning on going there, and then like the last thing you're like, oh yeah, this is my PTO request, and you're like, didn't you like already file PTO like 3 times before? Like,
Yeah.
but with the Aiyuk situation, I am a major Brandon Aiyuk fan. I think last year was like he cemented himself as like I said, like a top 7, if not, or top 10, if not a top 7 receiver in the league. And the entire 49ers shotgun passing game is just purely is run through what Brandon Aiyuk unlocks for them. The thing is, like we said, we thought like he requested a trade like a million years ago. I think 49ers are expecting a first round pick for him. If that was the case, if anyone was willing, like I'm honestly saying this right now, there's a reason that Aiyuk wanted a trade. Bills were sitting there with the 28th pick and they decided, oh, might as well draft some. Might as well trade back a couple times and draft someone at 33. There's a reason Panthers drafted or traded up to draft a receiver at 32, then rather just being like, oh, I'll trade this like highest, like the 33rd overall pick for Brandon Aiyuk. I think the market is valuing Brandon Aiyuk a little lower. I don't think he's getting the AJ Brown trade package because people know that they wanted, if they trade for him, the teams want him there for a while. The teams want to pay him $27-28 million a year for like for 4 years and actually lock him up. I think where this trade conversation gets a little iffy is what the Niners are asking for and what teams are willing to give up. Now, for the Patriots, I do think like there's no shot in hell with I'm projecting us as a 6-win team. 6-win probably is like the 7th or 8th overall pick. I'm not trading the 7th or 8th overall pick for Brandon Aiyuk. I do think a 2nd and a 4th makes a lot of sense for Brandon Aiyuk, and here's why. We have not seen a lot of receivers in a run-heavy offense like the Niners who are still consistently outside separators and inside separators. Like the only other example, like for a run-heavy offense that comes to mind is like Amari Cooper on the Browns. And that is something Aiyuk unlocks a whole different level. He's like a true 3-level scorer. And for why I think that like this is going to help, like Pete, you said, we don't have the offensive line or a lot of key pieces of the offensive line of the future in place. But when it comes to just establishing your quarterback of the future, that has been like there's been a lot of different ways to evaluate quarterbacks. But the one thing we have seen is that actually helps a quarterback take that next step forward is giving them that true outside 3-level scorer. And I think that is something in the available market, like let's say even including next year's free agency, like if you factor in T. Higgins, I still think Brandon Aiyuk is the best available option for that. So, which is why I think if that price is available right now, because with trades, you're either trading early on in the offseason or you're trading on draft day. So for teams are less incentivized. Teams are just like, oh, let's like if for the Patriots, it's a valid thing to be like, what if we are like again one of the 3 worst teams, and our 3rd round or our 2nd round pick is the 34th overall pick, which is essentially as close to being a 1st round pick as it can be. Do we trade that, or do we do like 2 future 3rds? Like what is going on in the Patriots' heads? And like there's also a lot of things like that, which makes the trade more unlikely. The last thing was about this was Brandon Aiyuk's willingness to sign with the Patriots. Brandon Aiyuk is willing to sign with everything we've seen on social media with the only team I can certainly say in the NFL that has a worse offensive line than the Patriots. And that is the Washington Commanders. Like they had one good offensive lineman last year, Charles Leno, and they didn't re-sign him. They're arguably, I would say they're the worst offensive line in football. Projected to be with a quarterback who, like, I get it, he has like that Arizona State connection. Jayden Daniels a million years old, and they played at Arizona State together. But we have way more concerns about Jayden Daniels as a prospect. That's league wide. And Jayden Daniels' ability to be a successful NFL quarterback than we have about Drake May. Jayden Daniels is 24, Drake May is 21. If he's willing to bank on a worse offensive line with a worse prospect just because he has like some sort of connection with Jayden Daniels and Jayden Daniels gave him Commanders film, I do think selling him on the Patriots or selling him on a rebuild does not feel like a hard task as long as he's getting that 27, 28, 29 million dollars a year. And that's the thing. Like, we're sitting here talking about like Brandon Aiyuk, like, would he want to be with a contender or would he want to be with a rebuilding team? His team was 2 plays away from winning the Super Bowl. And he still was like, I want out. I want the bag. And I think like them drafting Ricky Pearsall even pissed him off more. I don't think there would be like, it would be that hard of a sell as long as Brandon Ayuk's getting his market value to just being like, oh, if it's the Patriots or the Commanders or I don't know, like what other bad things, like Broncos, like Denver might be a bad sell, but that's something I think we like the sell part. I don't think that should be a problem. And I do believe that for the right price, there should be a trade on the table by the Patriots to the 49ers. I just don't know if the 49ers right price matches what I think is the Patriots right price.
100%. The price needs to be right. A second and a fourth, no, I'm out on that because the second pick, like you said, is essentially a terrible first round pick. It's going to be top 6, could be top 3. So you're right there, essentially at a first round pick. I don't want to trade for Aiyuk at that price. I'd rather try to go get him in free agency. Why are we giving up a second and a fourth to cut the line? That's what you're doing, right? Unless you're saying if he goes to the Commanders, he will resign there. Well, he probably went there he probably would re-sign with the Commanders in the offseason. Like if he wanted to sign with the Commanders, that's where he'll go. He'll come to the Patriots on a trade, go to the Commanders in the offseason because that's where he'll want to go. He can dictate. He is a free agent right now. He just can't pick where he plays next year. That's the best way of looking at Aiyuk. He just can't pick his destination in 2024, but he can completely pick where he plays in 2025. So if he likes Jayden Daniels, then he'll be a Commander and he won't be a Patriot. And it won't make sense for the Patriots to trade for him because they're just going to use him for a year that's wasted. So they definitely need to contact him and say, would you even be wanting to sign with us? And I think the reason he wants to play with a bad O-line in the Commanders is Jayden Daniels. You named it. He doesn't have a connection with Drake May as far as I'm concerned, or Gerard Mayo, or have any connection to us whatsoever, besides the fact like these lists of where he'll go are just listing people with tons of cap room next year.
Yeah,
they just Google who has the most cap room
and picks. Like that is it. Like,
do
they have enough trade capital? And yeah.
I mean, I get it, but I think what the 49ers are going to do is come off their price a little bit, or say to Aiyuk, listen, we're not trading you for nothing. You're going to sit out this year, and it's going to be a real bummer for you. Like almost like have a standoff. Who knows what happens? It almost feels like their business because I just don't think it's going to be the Patriots' business. They placed the call, but I think you just need to pick the phone. If you hear Aiyuk is requesting a trade and you're the Patriots, you have a ton of cap room and no wide receivers to speak of, you call. You say, what is it? Second and a fourth, you're like, all right, thanks for answering my phone call. Like that's what I would do if that was the situation. If they said fourth, I'd be like, oh, we'll send you a fourth right now. Like, where do we sign? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to call to see what the silly answer is on the other line of the phone. That's why you call.
Yeah. Someone, I don't know, I'm sorry, because I saw this tweet. I forgot who tweeted this, but they created this trade package, which was like the online trade simulator, and it was like perfectly valued trade because depending on Brandon Ayuk's contract, it was a third next year, a fifth next year, and a conditional third, or fourth turning into a conditional third in the 2026 draft with Juju Smith-Schuster and his entire salary. And I was like, the way it all worked out with salary differential and the draft capital, it was perfectly even trade. And I was like, I would honestly take that in a heartbeat. A third and fifth next year, Juju's salary is off the table. So like the next year, Brandon Aiyuk.
The 49ers though?
That's the interesting part. So and this is something I was thinking. What is holding the 49ers now that they've drafted Ricky Pearsall? And let's say Ricky Pearsall's like, they have a development plan for him in place. What, like, why wouldn't Kyle Shanahan, who's now actually just getting like insanely underrated because he just cannot win the Super Bowl? If I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm just like, no, like, even if it's a first round pick, no, like, my fucking legacy is on the line. I know after this year, I have to pay a quarterback because Purdy's going to be due for an extension. I just convinced everyone to do the worst move as a GM in football to pay a 28-year-old running back, or 29-year, going into like age 29-year-old running back, close to 20 million a year. If I'm Kyle, I'm just like, no, you're not going anywhere. This is 1 year. This is my last true shot where I am a true Super Bowl favorite. Let me get this. I think if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm not even thinking about trading him at all. Obviously, like, as a GM, your thoughts change. And I think with like how close Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are, I think they're going to be very much in agreement. And I think, if I'm being completely honest, I don't think Brandon Aiyuk gets traded to anyone this season. I think he plays for the 49ers. He's a free agent. And I think he gets over $30 million in a year next year.
He's definitely gonna get the bag. But if I'm
the 49ers, he deserves it too. He deserves it. Like,
this isn't
what he unlocks on the field. But I think if I'm Kyle, like, and again, like, this is like the conundrum in football that like championships matter so much more than anything else. Kyle Shanahan has been like the most innovative offensive mind for the last like decade or more. If he doesn't win a Super Bowl, like 2 generations down, they're gonna be like, "Oh, was he like a great coach or something?" Like, what are we even talking about? He might not even be considered for the Hall of Fame. If he wins 1 Super Bowl, he's a lock for the Hall of Fame.
Yep, easy.
That is, and for a guy like that, whose dad's in the Hall of Fame, his legacy is on the line, and he has the best roster of his career, he's going to be like, fuck no, I'm not trading him at all, no matter what the price is. I'm sticking, and we're going to go try to win this one season.
Especially because the offer that you brought up was a 3rd, a 5th, and a 4th the following year. Plus,
but the 4th can turn into a 3rd. The 4th can turn into a 3rd.
Let's just call it a 3rd. Let's give it the benefit of the doubt. A 3rd and a 5th and a 3rd the following year. And Juju, I'm like, okay, that is it. 2/3 is nice, right? Like, I'm not even talking like 5th, whatever. You know, and Juju is just like a hassle to have to deal with. If I'm have the mentality of like, this is my year, I'm not taking on Juju so I can have some future draft capital. Like, get this. Juju might not even make the Patriots wide receiver room. Never mind.
I mean, honestly,
the 49. Like, he's a cuttable player. Like, I've got you have a lot of these Patriots fans are putting up these trade proposals, and I don't see any 49ers putting up very similar trade. Oh, I would love to trade Aiyuk for a 3rd, a 5th, a 3rd, and Juju. I would love that to come to San Francisco. They're not thinking of Juju. They don't want Juju. We only want to get rid of Juju.
49ers fans' graphics are pay Aiyuk the bag. That's what their graphics are. Right? They're not even considering trading.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into our final thoughts. We're running up on an hour. I'll go first. You go second. Then I'll take us out of here. My final thoughts are: if you like to gamble, go on DraftKings and look at the last winless team. I put a bet in today for the Panthers to be the last winless team at plus 750. I only put $10 down, but the reason that I picked them is they had no incentive to win. They have no incentive to lose last year, right? And they were horrible. They had every incentive to win because their draft pick just wasn't theirs. Yet they still managed to lose like a ton of games. They didn't make any significant moves, and I said they made moves. They improved their offense. They did some coaching shuffles, but they lost defenders. They traded away Burns. They just downgraded their defense. But I think that's what you do in a rebuild sometimes. Kind of like how we're talking about trading Judon. You might take 2 steps back to take 3 steps forward. I see them kind of taking a step back to go forward, and they sucked last year. They're going to suck again this year. People in Patriots land are talking about they could, if they just had an offense, they could have been a playoff team. We got Taylor out here. Are they a wild card team? Right now, the Patriots have the worst, are the low man on the totem pole. So I'm going out there and picking the Panthers at plus 750. If you like money, maybe you should do that too.
I like that. The only thing I don't like about that bet, or the only thing that concerns me, is their Panthers' first 3 games are Saints, Chargers, and Raiders. and they might be able to sneak out one of those. And on the other hand, the Patriots' first 3 games are the Bengals, Seahawks, and the Jets. And those seem way harder, purely from a schedule perspective. But who knows? We might be 1-1. We might just sneak one past the Seahawks and be fine. So I like that bet at the plus 70. I think the plus 750 is a great number for that bet.
Yeah.
I think my final thought. So before training camp, everyone's starting training camp next week. So I'm going to get this out of the way right now. I think there's been a lot of hype about this team throughout the offseason because they're doing things the right way. Their coach finally has a young quarterback that can run his system. I think the Denver Broncos are going to be the worst team in football. And I think Denver Broncos win 3 or less games next season. I think it is actually laughable how bad their offseason was. We don't know, like, the only room or only position group in that entire team that moves me is the running back room with Javonte Williams, and they drafted Audric Estime. The secondary is just going to be Pat Surtain left on islands and the ball being thrown on the other side of the field and Patrick Surtain walking back. Sad. That is what their defense is going to look like. There's no one on that team who can consistently defend the run. There's no one on that team who can create any type of pass rush. Courtland Sutton is sick of being there. They have no other playmakers on offense when it comes to catching the ball. And they drafted and Courtland Sutton, who's supposed to be this deep ball guy, they drafted the only quarterback in this class who had more than 2/3 of his passes behind the line of scrimmage in college. Like, what are we doing? Denver Broncos, worst team in football next year.
What was the win total you had them at?
I mean, I took them under 3.5, like the alt.
Plus
but I
290?
think, plus 2. I think plus 300 when I got it. Yeah, something like that. But I think their overall win total is like 5.5 or 6 some places. But I like them under 3.5. I think they're actually going to be horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, under 4.5 is plus 150. Under 5.5 is minus 125.
I think I have the under, I think the regular under win total was 5.5, so I took the under on that. And I was like, actually looked through their schedule. I actually thought about it a little more, and I'm like, so I put like $15 down on their, or I think $20 down on their under 5.5, and I'm like, I think I should just put 10 more down just on the under 3.5. I think it'll just be fun to root for, and I just actually think they're going to be that bad.
I like it. All right, well, some things to follow. We'll have to jot these down throughout the season. We'll be making some predictions going into each week, taking our over under, looking at lines, looking at props, and we'll keep like the back of a baseball card. We'll keep our stats for you, so you should know if you should be following us or if you should be fading us. It's very important. But either way, we'll be helpful to you. If we're just getting them all wrong, just fade us each week, and you'll make some money. If we're getting them all right, follow the train, baby. Choo choo. But that does it for this week. For Divij, for myself, go Patriots, starting forever.